Okay, welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name's Paul James. I come from the acting background.
And I'm Josh Knapp. I'm a broadcast engineer.
Here we go.
All right, today we're going to talk about the new Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu movie.
Inarritu, that's...
Birdman. I think it might have...
Inarritu.
They have a tilde over the first in, I think, so it might be Inarritu, but I haven't heard anybody actually say his name.
Say it one more time.
Well, I'm looking at it here. There's a little it's a tilde.
Yeah.
So it's got the Inarritu.
Inarritu. It's a great name.
Yeah,
It's a really great name.
and I like that he keeps all three of his names.
And I can't
That's
wait
nice.
to see how people are going to be pronouncing this, because people will be pronouncing this name.
That is true. That is true. And I wanted to start off the podcast. We're going to talk the whole podcast about this movie because I think it both kind of hit us at different times. We didn't see it together, but it definitely hit us both. And I was just going to quickly play the voicemail that I got from Paul once he saw it.
Literally walking out of the theater.
That's right. Here we go.
Hey, it's Paul. Our next podcast is Birdman. Yeah, just coming out of it.
End this message.
Okay, so that's what I heard when I got his voicemail. I couldn't pick up the phone at the time, but before that, I watched the movie. You saw it at the Rialto, right? You saw it?
No, I saw it at in Cary. Yeah.
In Cary. Okay,
Yeah.
so anyway, we saw it at two different theaters. But I got done with the movie, and I was walking out of the movie, and
You
I
text
texted
me,
him.
yeah.
I said, "Birdman, see it now."
Yeah.
And so you did see it, and yeah, I think we both. It was unexpected. No, okay, so it wasn't completely unexpected, but I'm glad I didn't read about this movie beforehand too much.
I read a little bit. I saw a trailer which does nothing for it, meaning it wasn't a bad trailer, it wasn't a good trailer.
It was a perfect trailer, yeah.
You know nothing from the trailer for this movie. I was going to do this little skit in the beginning of the show and pretend like I really hated the film just to see your reaction. Well, it's all about actors, so I was going to try and just see if I could fool you. Because I did read this kind of bad review about it, and it was the complete opposite of how I felt about it, so I was going to play on that. But I was like, you know what, I'm too excited about the film to even fake it. But because it's about actors, I thought, well, let me tap into the actor in me. But I didn't go for that. So
Well, see, that would be hard for me to even believe.
Yeah,
because
I know.
I would have just checked out right at the beginning.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, that's so yeah. I mean, this movie. I'll just do a quick synopsis of it. A washed-up actor who once played an iconic superhero must overcome his ego and family trouble as he mounts a Broadway play in a bid to reclaim his past glory.
Writes, directs, and acts in the play.
Yes, that's the Michael
character,
Keaton character does. Writes, directs, and acts in the play, which I don't know. I mean, is that normal for movie actors to do something kind of like this?
I wouldn't say it was normal. I am not really. Nobody's coming to
mind. Okay.
That's a lot of that's a big undertaking. One, to be in a Broadway show, period, right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
To direct it, produce it, write it based on a novel. I've never heard of it. I mean, I'm sure it's been done. I can't say it hasn't been done, but nothing comes to mind immediately. Like, Denzel Washington just did that, or somebody just did
Sure.
that, especially a movie star, quote unquote.
Yeah, or even in this situation, a washed-up movie star in finger quotes. I mean, I think just to begin with, talking about the casting of this movie and how key the casting is to this movie.
Okay, well, I do have a rule about this.
Okay.
We need to discuss every single person. At least one sentence.
Sure.
Because cast is the first thing on my list, which I thought would be second to yours.
Well, you know what number? Can you guess what number one is?
It's got to have something to do with the one long shot.
Yeah.
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 And number
Okay.
2 for me is the soundtrack, but we'll get to that later.
I knew it. Okay, I do want to say this. There is something strange in the universe going on. What a perfect movie for you and I to be talking about. Did that dawn on you when
It
you
did.
came? I was like,
no, so it didn't dawn on me until after, when I was starting to prepare for the podcast, when I was realizing because I wrote down a lot of the things that I think doing this podcast with you has helped me to focus more like that. The craft I've written down here, craft of filmmaking, that I just inherently see and ingest, but the acting is something that I haven't necessarily paid as much attention to until we started doing this podcast. So that's helped me a lot.
And I would say the opposite is true for me. I've always seen the technique and the craft of movie making, but it doesn't. Sometimes if I'm watching that, it'll pull me out of it. Mm-hmm. But I literally was walking out of the theater with my hand over my mouth because I was giddy and I was smiling like I knew what I was getting on Christmas morning before everybody else did. I was like, what a perfect movie for us.
Yeah.
Coming from the theater background, coming from a technical background, it is the best of both worlds with a capital BEST exclamation point. I cannot stress that enough. I was just like, it was like the universe opened up and said, here is a gift for you guys, actor and engineer. All right. So to the cast.
Yeah. I mean, starting with Michael Keaton, it's from what I've read, I didn't know this much about Michael Keaton, like post. I mean, he's been in a couple movies in the 2000s, but like not that many. I think that they said in there the last movie he was in was 2008.
Right.
He directed it.
Right. Never heard of it.
I hadn't either, but still.
This is his first starring role or first lead actor role in 6 years in a film. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's a long stretch, but it sounds like it's not because it's not because he can't get work. It's because he doesn't necessarily want work. I guess he has some sort of a
look what he
place
waited
where he
for.
lives. Exactly. He has some sort of place where he lives out in the country, and he just likes doing that. And which is great. I mean, it's great that somebody's not,
Bill Murray's like that.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
he'll pick whatever he wants to pick.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But he still works pretty steadily.
Seemingly so. Yeah, he's got a new one coming out too, St. Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
That looks good.
It does look good. But having the ability to put somebody like Michael Keaton in this role, and somebody who you wouldn't necessarily think would be able to like rise, I feel like he rose to the challenge of this movie. And the problem with that statement that I just made is that he probably always had that capability. He just never maybe wanted to share it in that way, or we didn't. I didn't expect something like this from him. A kind of a whole performance like that from him, and he's got the history.
Yeah, amazing. That's amazing.
The same. I mean, I don't know how much the writing changed. Once
it has
they
to.
casted
It
him,
has to have had because it goes down the line with Edward Norton and Emma Stone, both in two big franchises for big movies too, and that's a big theme in this movie versus theater, if you will, if you want to put it versus or what's real art versus celebrityism and that kind of stuff. But anyway, back to Michael Keaton. He did a movie years ago called Clean and Sober. Did you ever see that? With Kathy Baker. And he's very good in it. Apparently, that's the movie that convinced Tim Burton to cast him as Batman. Wow. But they had already worked together in Beetlejuice. Yeah. I think as a movie actor, your career goes in one way, whether or not you're capable or not, to show those dimensions. I don't know if he's just never had the role to show it, but
maybe.
Boy, oh boy, in spades did he get it with this one.
Yep.
It's without a shadow of a doubt an Oscar nomination this year. And if it's not, I can't even put it into a sentence. There's no way he's not going to be nominated. There's no way.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing they threw in there is it kind of mirroring his situation with Batman and with the franchise of Batman. I didn't know this, but he turned down $15 million to be in Batman 3.
I heard that.
Wow. I mean, especially back then. I mean, nobody was getting paid $15 million for starring in movies, really.
Right.
So that must have been a huge decision for him to say, to kind of like end his relationship with that character for the reason of maybe wanting to move on to different things. And
well, my understanding is he didn't even want to do the second one.
I don't
really?
think but Tim Burton came back to do it.
Yeah,
so that,
and
I'm sure
something.
that helped.
Yeah, something about that. Now, was Tim Burton originally going to do the third one and then dropped out, or it was going to be Michael Keaton with who was it? Joel
Schumacher.
Yeah, which I don't mind that one. I like the Batman Forever film. I like it. I like Val Kilmer. I don't think he did a bad job. But so it was going to be not Tim Burton, but Michael Keaton.
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I
need to find that out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just read that he turned down that huge paycheck for Batman 3 or whatever. I mean, it was eventually called Batman Forever, but I'm not sure what the situation was with the movie. But it's not like nowadays where you sign on for 3 movies right off the bat,
Yeah,
and you're just
exactly.
kind of stuck.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, he obviously made that choice, and he's made some other. Well, I don't know about made choices, but like he's been in Jackie Brown. He was in Out of Sight. In fact, he played the same character in both of those movies, but because they were both based on
Elmore.
Elmore Leonard novels. Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, I felt like he was. I mean, from what I could glean from his performance, I felt like it was great, and he was definitely able to kind of like be bare and open. There's a scene in there where he goes outside in the middle of the play.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, he does. He just walks right outside in the middle of the play, and he closes his robe in the door, and he has to disrobe. Basically, he's down to his underwear, and he has to run around Times Square. And
Well, not just his underwear, but his tidy whities. So it's
it's
not
true.
like, and it's an interesting juxtaposed to the opening sequence where he's meditating without giving too much away in the same getup, and you're not feeling as voyeuristic watching him because obviously this is the beginning of the film. You're trying to be, you're getting whatever lesson they're setting you up to be taught, and then he moves around like a normal person getting dressed. So you're not thinking to yourself vulnerability, and then of course he gets trapped outside, and
Yep.
he's and in Times Square, and that place is crazy like that. That is like that all the time.
Jeez.
And I kept thinking to myself, oh, he's going to be at Twitter. He's going to be on Twitter. And sure enough, they make a point about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he bears almost every part of himself in this movie, spiritually, physically, all of the above. And he is getting older. And he's looking older, and he's aging. How old is he?
he was born in 1951, so he's 63.
Okay, well, he looks 63. But to be in your tidy whities in Times Square, Michael Keaton, Batman, at 63, right there, that's brave. I mean, that's brave. And the panic on his face, not because he's in his tidy whities. How many times can I say tidy whities? In Times Square, it's because he's got to get back up on the stage because it's the quintessential part of the play. It's the ending part of the play. It's the, cathartic part of the play. And the panic on his face, it's just written all over him. He could care less about people holding up their cell phones and going, Birdman, Birdman. He could care less. That scene's incredible. The scene with Emma Stone's incredible. Dude,
Well,
seriously.
So there's a
jeez
couple of scenes,
Louise.
but yeah, close to the end.
With Amy Ryan, the scene with Amy Ryan where he's laying down and he's real calm at the end of the movie. Right. There was a couple moments that he kind of choked up and welled up, and I thought, wow, I haven't seen that Michael Keaton in the movies before. And I thought, I get that feeling about, okay, this is what Oscar caliber performances are. And then I immediately got this feeling, there's always one overlooked. I hope it's not this one. There's always one. I don't know why. There just is. And then those two scenes happened, the one with Emma Stone and the one with Amy Ryan. And I was like, he's a lock, dude. And if he's not, I won't be able to understand that at all. Because it's not like he took on this role to be showy and to show people what to do. He took on the role. He said it's the hardest thing he's ever had to do because it was the furthest thing from himself in real life. And the dimensions, he didn't expect the dimensions to take him where he was going. And then they talk about, I think it's on IMDb, how they did 15, 20 pages at a time.
Yeah.
That's unusual for a movie. It's maybe a half a page, 3 pages of dialogue, maybe, with those long camera shots, with him in almost every scene of the movie.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, he has to play Birdman. Then he has to do the voiceover, which just for a split second, at one moment, sounded like Beetlejuice. Just for a split second.
Really?
And I had to remind myself that is him. But at first, I was like, is that Michael Keaton talking?
I could tell they kind of ran it through some filters
You
and
think
stuff.
so?
Yeah, it was definitely him.
No. I'm saying, but they ran it through something to make his voice sound different.
Deeper.
You don't
and-
think he did that?
I don't think so. I
No?
mean, he could have done something like that, but I think there was definitely. And they can use different microphones and stuff to make things sound different, but they probably use some post processing.
Did you catch the little "you were the originator" line? If you think about it, all the Batman voices have sort of been similar since him.
Yeah.
I'm Batman. Everybody imitates it. It's one of those things, all the way down to Christian Bale. They all have that deep kind of, I'm Batman sound. And he originated that. And they just all kind of played on it from that point on. There's a line in that movie about how you were the originator and you started this franchise. They're talking about Birdman at some point. I don't remember what part about the movie. And I was like, you know what? They're right. He really did start that voice and that Batman bravado, bravado in his voice. Yeah. So if they ran it through filters, it was barely recognizable. If that's, I'd like to do some research on that because I'd be even more impressed if they didn't. Because I think that's his voice, dude.
I'm sure it's his voice, but I think that, like I said, they can do all kinds of stuff, to voices to beef them up or change them. Or whatever.
Do you think that cheapens the role then? No.
I mean that was. I mean, they could have done that in the original Birdman movies in this universe. In the Birdman universe, they could have done that to his voice in the original Birdman movies. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. Do you want to talk about who do you want to talk about next?
Edward Norton.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier on that you don't know how much the script was rewritten for the actual actors. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously that whole concept, Birdman. Did you read the story about how Alejandro, he went to Mike Nichols and sat him down in New York and said, this is what my next project is. And Mike Nichols said, don't do it. It will fail. It's not a great idea. I mean, it's just not going to work. So yeah, it's on IMDb. Okay. And he was like, okay. And he ended up doing it anyway. I saw him on PBS special, all of them, Michael Keaton, Edward Norton, the director. I think Emma Stone was there too. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how Mike Nichols, who is a theater and film director, said, don't do this. Or it's just not going to work. I can't foresee how this is going to work, but he did it anyway. So back to Edward Norton, he's known for being a pain in the ass actor, to work with, and he's a pain in the ass in the movie as an actor.
And he's known for rewriting things too.
Yes, and that's in there too. So I'm not sure how much. Obviously, the core part of the script, which is what I was originally saying about the Mike Nichols thing, was there because the idea of the Birdman character trying to do theater, so forth and so on. So how much that was rewritten for Michael Keaton, I have no idea. It seems like it was just perfect. Like it was written for him, but I think that was on page. Now, the Edward Norton thing, I'm not so sure. Yeah. But I don't know if Edward Norton has done a lot of stage work since he's become famous.
I don't know,
I did not for 1 second disbelieve he was that guy. And he has the greatest line. It's not a great line, but when he says, I know how to be up on the stage. I know how to act up on the stage. I know what to feel. I know what to do when I'm up there. It's the rest of the time in the world that I have a hard time with. I sat back and I was like, finally, somebody has said it. I totally get that. Sometimes I'm walking through life and I don't know what to do or say, and that's kind of where my over-the-top personality comes from. It's not a defense mechanism. It's just something I've learned to be the clown of the party instead of the wallflower. It's just an easier position for me to take, even though it's exhausting sometimes. But when he said that, I was like, I get that perfectly. I think to non-theater people or non-film goers or people who really only just go to movies for entertainment, which is fine, they might not really understand that line. They might not comprehend what he's saying. But there is a different moment when you're up on stage. The believability in your heart feels different than when you're in real life. I'm not saying I fake things in real life. I'm saying, but somehow having another person's lines and words makes it easier to be truthful. It's crazy, but it's true. Yeah. And I think this is a possible Oscar nomination too, just because his performance is so solid. He doesn't do anything over the top great. He's solid though. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that I noticed is the similarities between him, like how he's known as an actor and how he's known as and how he is in the movie, how his character is in the movie. And I don't know enough about the theater world to know if those guys are out there, the guys who just waltz in and say, this is how it's going to be, and why are you doing it this way? And you're just kind of like, they feel like they could just take over the room. And especially when you've got somebody who's, like you said, not only the director, but also the star of the play. And then
it's the way he went about that, though.
Writing it. And he's like, are you sure you want to do this? You said it.
Let me ask you about that, he says. Let me ask you about this line. You say that 4 times. He never tells him this is not something you should say 4 times. He poses it as a question, and yes, they're out there. And yes, there are these people who just learn their lines, take the stage, and they're fantastic. And it takes no effort. You never see him sweating. You never see him breathing. Maybe that's the difference between a born actor and somebody who's learned how to do it. I don't know. But yes, they're out there. So, and he embodied it perfectly. I forgot one thing I wanted to say about Michael Keaton is I forgot it was Michael Keaton throughout the film. I forgot it was Edward Norton. And these are big stars. You know, I started to believe they were who they were supposed to be. You know, I would have to remind myself every once in a while just to keep myself, I don't know, I kind of remind myself every once in a while I'm watching a movie because it makes me a little bit more objective, if you will, in finger quotes, instead of subjective, instead of just delving into it and completely, sometimes I have to pull myself out. So anyway, Edward Norton.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like he did a great job too. You want to talk about Emma Stone next?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
She is really
Good
impressive.
Lord.
I mean, from the beginning of seeing her in Superbad, we've talked about her in Superbad. We've talked about, you know, her in Zombieland, and there, she just kind of has ramped herself up to these performances and given herself these opportunities and
just knocked it out of the park every single time.
Every time.
How does she do? This is the first thing I put, and it's a very superficial thing to say. How does she always look so dumbed down? She doesn't look, she's so beautiful. She's supposed to be the kind of plain looking person in The Help, the movie The Help, if you ever saw that. I didn't necessarily buy into her being not the pretty one in the room, but in that style in that decade, I guess she was the plain one. You know, she had freckles and red hair.
and the curly hair. Like
Yeah,
really
and
curly
this
hair.
one, she's supposed to be a burned out drug addict who
Yeah.
just came out of
rehab,
and I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And everybody mentioned that she's lost a lot of weight. Now you know why. She looks like she had a drug problem in this movie. She looks tired. She looks worn out. And she's, 20 years old?
Yeah.
How does she... Michelle Pfeiffer tried to do this a couple times where she played a role where she wasn't supposed to be as attractive as she is in real life. And it didn't really work 100%. You kept going, this woman's beautiful. Emma Stone is a beautiful, beautiful woman, but... she looked the character. She really did look the character. She had to be appealing to Edward Norton, obviously. She had to be turn on, finger quotes again. And she was, but she also had to be this other person who she became too.
And I think that one way that the cinematographer, who we haven't talked about yet, but
We'll
we
get
need
there.
to, Emmanuel Lubetsky, one way that he helped that is that in her more intense scenes, he used a wide angle lens. So that ends up distorting faces. You can get really close to, I mean, Terry Gilliam does it all the time. So you can end up getting really close to somebody and it distorts their face. And she has really big eyes.
Yes.
And so you see that with a wide angle lens. I'm specifically thinking about the scene close to the end where she basically confronts her dad, confronts Birdman about him being, his not being a very good father, I guess. So, and he does it in a way where he gets really close to her, and the way that she's emoting, the way that she's acting, it accentuates her eyes, and she just kind of looks a little off. Like she doesn't look like a normal person, and I
Like
think
somebody who just went through rehab.
Yeah,
she really does.
And so a lot of that, I think, that helps. The
That's
wide
interesting.
angle lens helps. I think.
I would have never put that together. Now that you're saying that, I see exactly what you're talking about. Let's go back for a moment for the scene where between her and Michael Keaton, where she says to him, "You are nothing." You remember what I'm talking about?
Now, is that in his dressing room?
No,
or-
he's coming back into the theater and she's in the room all by herself. It's like a little mini bar area.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's at the beginning of the film.
Okay.
Well, it's not the beginning of the film, but it's not the end of the film. That's for sure. That scene right there, and it's not the tell-off. You did this, and there's a whole world out there, Dad, and you're not any part of it. You're not on Twitter. You're not on Facebook. Who are you? You're nothing. Right then and there, and you never see Keaton in that scene when she's going off on him. Watch it again when you see it again.
All right.
Never do you see him. It's not until after he starts speaking that you see him again. And the look on her face when she realized what she just said to him is devastating. And I would like to finally see her get her Oscar
Oh
nomination.
man, this is 3.
I'm telling you, it's all written down too.
Okay.
It's not like I'm making it up as I go along. I thought it when I was watching it. I was sitting there thinking, she's really doing it again for me. She's just always on point. From the very opening sequence when you see her on the computer, I hate this job when she's trying to get him flowers.
Yep.
She's his assistant. And she has been given this job obviously because she's had all these problems. She's just come
Nobody
out.
else will hire her.
Right, nobody else will hire. And this is her dad, and he's added to his issues too, having his daughter who is he's obviously not that close to, and so forth and so on. So, but that scene when she goes, you're nothing, and then she stops and she realizes maybe all that's true, but why would I say that to my dad? I still love him. And the look on her face, she's devastated that came out of her mouth. And you could tell she has that moment where you said something you can never take back, and it's always going to be out there. And so, yes, I said, okay, I wrote down Michael Keaton, Oscar nomination, definitely. Edward Norton, maybe. Emma Stone, please. That's what I wrote down.
You're just rooting for her.
Absolutely.
How about Zach Galifianakis?
Who would have guessed it?
Yeah.
Who would have guessed it?
It's good that he's challenging himself. I think he's done an interesting thing. He started off as a comedian in kind of like the alternative comedy scene. I've seen his stand-up, which is kind of, for a lot of people, his stand-up is off-putting because he'll sit at a piano and he'll just like play basic piano stuff and just do one-liners, and it's hilarious.
I've
to
seen
me.
that. Yeah, it is
hilarious.
Fun. Yeah.
But some people are just kind of like, yeah, okay, this is not for me. But anyway, he's kind of parlayed the whole hangover thing into opportunities, into being able to be, being able to be approached for something like this. And he's ultimately the straight man in a lot of these. He does have a couple of times,
which is surprising, isn't it?
But it's good. It's good that he can actually. I did read an article talking about I think it was in IMDb where they were saying that that they kept track, Keaton and Edward Norton kept track of, since they had such long takes, who ruined the takes and how many takes they ruined. And the person that ruined them the most was Emma Stone. The person that ruined the least
was Zach
Galifianakis.
Who would have guessed it?
Yeah.
Good for him on so many different levels. I was waiting for that hangover moment, and he sort of has it more so. I didn't expect him to make a transition like this. He doesn't make a huge transition. It's not like Robin Williams from Good Morning Vietnam to Awakenings. It's not that huge, but I never foresaw, like I'm this big foreseer of things, but I did not see that in Zach Galifianakis. I didn't see it. I didn't see when he turns and he says to Michael Keaton and I think it's Amy Ryan at the end, "This is my best friend. Of course I'm happy. This is my best friend. Of course of course I'm his lawyer and I'm his producer and I'm the money guy and all this other." Lawyer? Producer?
Well, he is a lawyer and he's his friend and he's also the producer of the play. The play,
right. He's happy that it's all come off, for lack of a better term, but he's happy for Michael Keaton, and you can see it. It's genuine. It's true. It's all based in truth. He never goes over the top. He never gets farcical. And there's a couple moments where, when Michael Keaton destroys the dressing room, which is a big cliche, by the way, in the theater world, which I thought was great how they handled that. That's superb. He walked in. He could have had this over-the-top reaction and this over-the-top moment, but he walked in and just kind of started spewing out the facts of the day. This has got to happen today, and this has got to happen today, and this is. As he's looking around at all the destruction, he's like, "Yep, that's the broken stereo. Those are the CDs. Yep, I got to do this. And it could have been very comedic, but I'm wondering how he got this role. I'm wondering if he fought for it, if he was thought of for it, because if he was thought of for it, Alexandro is a genius because good Lord, how did he put this together like this? How did it come together? I need to do research. That's what's coming from this podcast.
It's stuff like that I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's actually going to be a definite answer depending on. I mean, they've got to be asked that specifically in an interview or something. But usually,
Let's
that
get him on the
phone. Just call him up. No big deal.
Not? Sure.
But I think he is from South Carolina, though.
Oh, is he?
So, yeah. I don't think
hey,
he's
man, we might know somebody, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You never know. Weirder things have happened, dude. Trust me.
That's true. So, and then do we want to talk about Naomi Watts next?
For me,
she impressed me the least of all of them.
Yes, but I think it's the role. I don't think that she was in 21 Grams and got her Oscar nomination for 21 Grams. So I'm always been impressed with her. I've always liked her. Which
was also an Inarritu movie.
Which I love and highly recommend. If people haven't seen it, see it. It's one of Sean Penn's best performances, in my opinion. Also, Benicio del Toro and The Fighter mom. Melissa Leo. Yeah. Superb. Benicio del Toro got his second Oscar nomination for 21 Grams. Anyway, I have seen her in a lot of things and I've liked her. I think it's great that the lead actress in the play, in the movie, takes none of the attention away from the movie. They could have, yes, she's sleeping with Edward Norton. Yes, she has a past with Michael Keaton. Yes, she has a history with this theater. Yes, this is her first Broadway play. I thought it was great that she didn't call too much attention to her. So I wouldn't say I was least impressed by her.
So you feel like she played the role?
Yes.
Okay.
She did her job.
Okay.
And in that kind of movie, you could have done it 1,000 different ways that could have ruined it. She could have been the woe is me actress. And the scene with her and Edward Norton in the bed, she's good in that.
Yeah, that's true.
And then she comes out of that and she's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And then she has that great line about they're together and he can't produce when he's not on stage in more ways than one, without giving too much away from the movie, about the movie. But without a grounded performance, you could have really ended up hating Edward Norton. You could have really ended up hating Michael Keaton for putting her in that situation. But and then she has that nice touching scene where she's like, I just want to say thank you. My dream is coming true because of you. And she could have played it this weepy, teary Oscar moment. She didn't. She played it real. She played it true. She did her job.
All right.
My hands go up to her.
All right. How about Andrea Riseborough?
Is she the other lady?
She is.
Who's in Oblivion?
She is in Oblivion.
Okay.
And I didn't put that together until after I got out of the movie. I was like, I've seen her before.
Right. She's beautiful.
She
is
is.
Physically, stunningly
And
beautiful.
I think she looks much better without red hair. She had red hair.
I kind of thought she
Oblivion.
looked more interesting with red hair. Because
I don't know. I thought she was pretty attractive in this movie.
she's beautiful. She's beautiful. She's, once again, actresses have a stereotype, like all characters in real life have a stereotype, and they are melodramatic and like actors are, and they have this manipulative stereotype. And it was interesting to watch how he wrote the female characters. They were strong, they were dominant without being overpowering, and I thought she was there. She did her job. It could have been. I feel the same way about her and Naomi Watts. They could have overplayed it, and they didn't. They could have taken more of the spotlight, but they didn't. They played their roles. She sat back. She did what she was there to do, and she has that great scene where she's like, "Hey, what's happening that we were talking about earlier is not happening." You know what I'm talking about? Okay.
We can. I think at some point we need to start giving these away because I want to talk to you about the ending. So
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I would say
She thinks she's pregnant.
Yeah.
She ends up not being pregnant. But instead of saying, oops, I'm not pregnant, or damn, I'm not pregnant, or oh, I wish I was pregnant, she walks on stage going, I would have never thought of reindeer, because there's a scene where she has a monologue where there's a bunch of reindeers floating around, people in costumes that look like kind of Salvador Dali reindeer. She was like, I would have never thought of reindeers. Thanks for that. So instead of having this big over-the-top, I'm not pregnant, or I'm pregnant, or any of that stuff, she says, thanks for giving me this moment on stage. I liked it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was so underplayed that it was played perfectly, especially the tone she hits. So I like her.
yeah, she's great, and I'm interested to see what she's going to do in the future. I think she's kind of on her way up as opposed to.
This would have made me open my eyes to her if I was a producer of films. I would have gone, okay, let's consider her for something next. Let's put her on our list. So she did what she had to do. What is the lady's name who plays the critic?
Oh, I thought that was Toni Collette, but I could be wrong.
No, that's not Toni Collette.
Looks like Toni Collette with a bunch of eye makeup on.
Yeah, no, that's not Toni Collette. It wouldn't have been a bad idea, but Toni Collette's not as old as that lady is, or not as...
Well, it looked like she definitely had... I mean, if it was Toni Collette, she would have had to have a lot of makeup on.
No, it wasn't her.
I'm looking it up here.
Isn't it?
And I'm not...
I've seen this lady before, and I cannot figure out what her name is. As soon as you figure it out. But anyway, she played her part too.
Tabitha is the character name. It's Lindsay Duncan.
Yeah, I don't know what I know her from.
She was in About Time. She was the mother in About Time. I just saw that movie, actually. She was in Alice in Wonderland, the new one. But, yeah, she was in Sherlock. I think have you seen Sherlock?
Yeah.
I think she plays the older lady in Sherlock who lives downstairs.
Well, once again, that's everything you've seen has happened in the theater, and there is this theory or possible belief that is true that critics will close your play just because they don't like who you are. it does work too. I mean, there are theater critics in New York that if you get a bad review, that's it. You're done. There are things that seem to be non-stoppable, like the Spider-Man musical, even though that was really a big miss on so many different levels and it was tore apart. It still was a hit financially. So there are things that work the opposite way, but that scene between them, and this is what I loved about it. What have we always said about talking about movies? We don't do anything. We sit in the movie theater and we watch it. We pay money, which we earned. So there's a little bit of effort there. Okay. We might, go out on a limb and have a couple extra calories because we're going to have popcorn. But what effort do we make? Nothing. So to come out and say, oh, that movie sucked immediately is never where I want to come from. And he says it to her. Michael Keaton says it to her. What do? You sit in the dark. You do nothing. You add nothing to this art form. At least I'm trying to do something. And it's just, he starts to have just a bit of over-the-top Michael Keaton moment, but it's such an important moment, and it's so important for audiences to hear that because in this generation of click, paste, and go on the computer, you can just say, I hate that. They suck. Go. Send. You're not thinking about the effort and the time and the method and the practice and
and you don't even have to spend the time to get a piece of paper, get a pencil, write it down, put it in an envelope and send it to somebody who would read it. It's just there.
Right.
It's immediate.
Yeah, and it's these horrible name calling things that do nothing to add to. Now, if you don't like something, that's perfectly okay with me. Give me 10 reasons why you don't like it. I'm fine with that. But don't hate it because you don't like Bono's sunglasses or you don't like the way that Tina Turner wears her dress a certain way. Whatever it may be, tell me what you don't like about the music, what you don't like about the play. So it was interesting to actually see a film director, writer, writing about a theater writer, actor talking about critics. I was like, I love this. I wanted to stand up in the theater and go, people, do you get this? Are you getting this? But of course, I didn't. But I thought she was on point too. I want to get really quick to who was the actor who played the bad actor in the beginning of the film?
I am not sure.
Okay, sorry we don't know his name, but
Jeremy Shamos.
Okay, good. I'm glad we know his name. How interesting is this? Okay, you've seen Dirty Dancing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, think about it for a split second. Jennifer Grey has to act like she doesn't know how to dance, even though she's already rehearsed all of these dance numbers for months before the filming starts. So how do you, as an actor, act as a bad actor? You'd have to be a good actor to act like a bad actor.
So how did he get this role? By acting bad?
Well, yeah, I would think you'd have to be a good. I bet you he's like this great Shakespearean actor that nobody knows of, and
Probably.
in order to play, and he really did. I've been in rehearsals. I've been that actor too, where I just don't know what I'm doing, so everything is just over the top, and you just and you question everything, and you don't because you're out of your element. You're just not in your element. So I give props to that guy because to be in a film, especially in the movies, are producers and directors not going to think he's really a bad actor because he was coming across as a bad actor?
That's true.
So I want to give props to him. Do you have anybody else? Because I got to mention one more person.
No.
Okay, Merritt Weaver. Do you know who she is?
No.
Okay, watch out for her. She's on Nurse Jackie, the television show on Showtime. She won the Emmy a couple years ago. She played the stage manager in Birdman. She has one or two scenes.
She was in Michael Clayton.
She was in Michael Clayton. She's, you know who she is? She's the girl in Signs who's behind the pharmacy counter, whose father, I'm not a father anymore, but father, I need to tell you about this. That's Merritt Weaver.
Okay.
Her name came to me because she won the Emmy for Nurse Jackie, which I had never seen, and I started renting it on Netflix after her Emmy speech because she walked up there and she was so flustered because she was not expected to win. And she just was like, yeah, okay, thanks. And she runs off. And they were like, wait, what? You just had this moment to be, in the spotlight. And she did a Joe Pesci is what I call it. Where she was just so giddy and so overwhelmed that she was like, okay, all I can say is thank you. And she walked off. Then I've seen Nurse Jackie and she's well-deserved. How she hasn't won the Emmy every year is beyond me. But she's a standout even in this. Do you remember the moment when he asks her to do something and she goes, oh, okay, well, how do I do that? The way that she said that is exactly how a stage manager, the way she stood, the way she held her headset on her head, the way she was looking at the monitor, everything about her said stage manager. And I thought, what a nice little role for somebody. And there's a saying in the theater, there's no small parts, only small actors. And that's the truth, because she played every moment she had, which is not very many, as truthful as she could. So Merritt Wever, next time you see her name, you'll recognize her.
That's great. And actually, by looking at her IMDb, like, I think I did notice her. I recognized her, but I think I recognized her from Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't
show?
seen that, no.
It's an Aaron Sorkin show that he did after he left West Wing. And Aaron Sorkin he wrote, Moneyball, and he
won the Oscar for Social
Network.
Yes,
exactly. But that's our David Fincher for today.
There you go.
But anyway, so she played the assistant to one of the main guys on Studio 60. Yeah, and she
just has this strange disposition where she's the kind of actress who comes in and delivers the line, and the writer goes, "I never heard it that way ever." Cast her, because she came. It just is natural. It's real. If you ever get a chance to see Nurse Jackie, it's worth the watch. It's an interesting show. A little bit hard to watch, drug addict, Edie Falco, nurses, ER, that kind of stuff. But she plays the sort of comedic sidekick without being that. She's the innocent nurse, but she's smarter than they give her credit for. She's just interesting. She was in that show and that show, The New Girl.
New Girl. I've seen New Girl, but I haven't watched it recently.
You know the guy who supposedly lost all the weight from college to their friend?
Mm-hmm.
She plays his college girlfriend, who also has a little bit of weight on her. And then when he loses all the weight, he doesn't want to have anything to do with her, but yet he's still in love with her. So he starts secretly dating her and this other girl at the same time. She's phenomenal in this. So anyway, Merritt Wever. Great. Can't say enough about her.
All right. Well, then, if you want to move on to the more technical aspects, I mean, I think the one thing that we kind of we talked about it initially at the beginning of the movie, but we kind of downplayed it maybe, is the technical feat of this movie, of so many long takes, stitching them together in a way that makes it seem like it's a single take. I mean, it does really look... There were only a couple of times where I was like, there's definitely a cut there.
Yeah, one time going through the door, I noticed something.
Going upstairs to the roof, you could tell that they kind of basically went all the way to black at the door to the roof, and then they opened the door. But still, I mean, and they have to do that for, like you said, because I mean, you're doing, like you said, 14 pages of dialogue. I mean, you got 10, 12, 13-minute takes that they're having to do. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, there have been other movies that have been done in single shots, but
there have been.
Yeah. So from what I was reading, because I started like going down the rabbit hole of single shot movies, and the most quoted one or the most referenced one is Rope from that was not a single shot, but it was perceived as a single shot by Alfred Hitchcock. It was a 1948
I've seen
movie.
it. Jimmy Stewart, right?
Jimmy Stewart, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He doesn't come in until like halfway through the movie, but
it's a good film.
But yeah, it is good. And the way that Hitchcock did it is he would like kind of like go behind a person's, like follow a person, and they kind of like not zoom in, but like get close to his jacket, and then he would pull away from his jacket, and that would be a cut point.
Which is similar to what
here. A lot
here.
of the cut points, I think, are in pans, where they'll pan across a room quickly, and you can cut in the middle of that pan.
Yeah.
And there was another one where they would like basically move the camera to, like, there was one shot of the hallway. It was close to the end of the movie. It was just a shot of the hallway for maybe, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It was a long time. And there you can cut too, because you can lock the camera off and then, come back and do it again. So there were multiple cut points that they had. I think it's mainly like going in and out of doors and pans, but still there was a lot of moving in and out of rooms, and they're using natural light. They shot this in an actual theater.
Yeah, the St. James.
Yeah, the St. James in Manhattan. So, I mean, that right there, you're dealing with, you don't have complete light control, which from the cinematographer standpoint, Lubezki, from his standpoint, he's got to deal with a lot of stuff. He's got to make adjustments from the dressing room to the hallway, and the crew themselves have to like be on point, and they have to make sure they stay out of the frame and out of the shadows that are seen in the frame. It's
Well, don't
It's
you think a lot
amazing.
of that can be manipulated with the computers nowadays? Because there's those mirror shots. There's always those shots in movies where
The
you're,
mirror shot,
Yeah.
yes, that was CGI. Yeah.
Right. Well, there's always those shots when you're watching like a family at dinner and they're all sitting on one side of the TV or one side of the table because the camera's on the other side of the
Yeah.
table, and you're like, wait, that's not real. And there's always those shots when like somebody's in the bathroom, the door's just cracked open just enough so you can see their leg but nothing else, and you're always like, wait, that doesn't happen in real life. There's always those camera shots where they go in front of the mirror and stop right at the angle where you would see.
The camera, but you don't. But this one
Goes
they
to-
keep moving.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the first time that I've ever seen that. I don't know if I've ever seen that before.
Oh, really? There's been scenes where they've done that before.
Really?
In other movies. I mean, more recent. I mean, we're talking
Well,
the last
obviously,
10 years.
yeah, because of the-
to where you can actually use a computer to composite out, the people who are running the camera.
But it felt almost like a relief that the camera did keep going around where it would naturally go around instead of stopping right at the angle where you would see it or the shadow or that kind of stuff.
It makes it feel more natural. Yeah. I
Absolutely.
mean, it makes it feel more believable too. Like you're not hamstrung by this angle or that angle, that kind of a thing. But the other thing, I also watched another. I mean, there's not a lot out there about this movie as far as like behind the scenes type stuff just yet. But there was a video of the colorist, the digital colorist, who basically takes the movie that's been shot and he can change highlights on a actor's face without affecting the rest of the frame, or he can do all kinds of stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you're constantly in contact with the director and the cinematographer to do all that. So I got to see a little bit of that, and he talked a little bit about the long takes and where the cuts were, but I mean it wasn't as as complete as like a full length feature length commentary would be. I would love to listen to a feature length commentary of this movie just to kind of like see what they had to go through and where they had issues. And I mean there's a bunch of props involved, like props on the set that are involved, and
The set moves and the audience is there
Yeah.
and the doors go. Yeah.
and you're moving in and out of rooms and
And you know what I was thinking is it never felt like a gimmick. It felt like it was part of the storytelling process.
there was, at what point did you realize, did you know it was all one shot before you went in?
No, I did notice because of you and talking about long shots.
Okay.
I have noticed that before. And I guess I, on some level, have always noticed it. Like the player has that opening shot. And I noticed that. I was like, wow, this has really been going on for a long time. And then, of course, we were talking about what's the Orson Welles film?
Touch of Evil.
Yes, and I finally saw the opening sequence to that, and that's real. And that is almost to the point where it's so set up that you can tell it's been rehearsed. This, I guess they were going through a door or up a stairwell, and I was thinking to myself, gosh, that is just like it is backstage of a theater, obviously because it's a theater, duh. But that's how it is. Somebody's going up one way, and as another person's going out another way, and you're having a conversation backstage while another person's moving a prop this way, and it's all flowing. There's way more interesting things sometimes going on backstage than on stage a lot of times. I think it was somewhere where they went up into the lighting rig and then shot from above to below, and then the shot changed into the next day or something. I think that's when I went, wait a second.
Why isn't there a cut?
There's not been any fade outs or anything. That's one of the techniques that I loved, where he went up to the sky and the sky changed from day or night to day or vice versa. That we've seen before, but not like this. It was one shot of the building.
And then they come back around and go into the window.
Amazing. Like I said, there's nothing about what he chose to do as a director that made it feel gimmicky. Like, let's see if we can get away with shooting this scene in a mirror without being seen. Let's just do it for that reason. Everything seemed purposeful to the script. It added to the script because you really do get a sense of what working on a play is like. Because if you've never been in that world, you don't have a clue that the stage manager is right there, stage left. You have no clue that somebody's standing behind that curtain right there. No clue whatsoever. I mean, it's obvious that that's where they're coming from when they walk out on stage, but there's a lot of things that you have no idea where people are and they're doing things. And the way that the dressing rooms, they're not extravagant.
Yeah.
They're not expensive looking. There's nothing Hollywood about them at all. And this is a prominent Broadway stage. I've seen one or two plays there. I've been blessed to see. I saw Phantom right across the street that you see in the movie with the balconies. I saw Phantom of the Opera there 2 years ago. Fantastic. So, yeah, I never felt like anything was just this, let's see if we can get away with this cool shot. It added to the movie.
Yeah, and I mean that I'll bring up David Fincher again. That is what I noticed. What I love about David Fincher is that he doesn't necessarily use these, CGI effects for, crazy. Oh, we're gonna take this dinosaur and rip apart a bus. It's the subtle things that he uses CGI for, and that Inarritu is using CGI for, that make things seem more natural, as opposed to pointing out, how unnatural a particular situation is, like a camera being behind a person looking into a mirror and not seeing the camera. Whereas me and you, we've seen enough movies and we, have analyzed them enough that, we're noticing that kind of stuff. But I'm guessing that, half of the audience isn't realizing that that's physically impossible.
But on some level, subliminally, subconsciously, whatever it may be, it's treating the audience to the story in a different way, and it's telling the audience the story in a different way. That's what I was saying about it not being a gimmick. The over the head shots, and then the coming over the building shots, and then the great scene when he's on the edge of the building.
Yep.
And the woman across the
Is this a movie?
yeah, is this a movie? Are you guys doing it? Yeah, it's a film, and it plays on itself.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not an audience member is tuned into that or not, or even cares about that kind of stuff like we do,
Mm-hmm.
or even has a passion about it, the storytelling is enhanced by that stuff. Yes, this is a film. Yes, I used to be Batman. Yes, I'm on top of this building. Yes, we're filming it. Yes, the audience is in on it too.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those shots that he does, it helps the story move in a way that I really haven't seen ever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to go back and think of the references later on, but it also helps the audience understand something even just on an emotional level. Because when you are looking from the up top of the theater, from backstage, when they're up on that lighting rig and they're looking down on the stage, it's a completely different view than obviously being on stage or in the audience. And it's always interesting to me to see something live on stage when you see the audience. Did you see the French film Amour?
No.
Okay, it's a must.
It's a tough
Yes.
movie to see, I'm sure.
Whoa, more so than you can even imagine. But it falls under that category that I've talked about. If her being nominated, why not him? I'll say that first. But there's an opening shot in that film which is from the stage point of view, not the audience point of view. And so you're seeing the audience, and that shot's been done before, but the way that they did it in Birdman was it was just part of, it was almost like the camera was the third actor on the stage. And it's interesting as an actor where you have to tune that audience out. They're there. You can see them moving. I've been 3 feet in front of an audience before. Yeah. It was crazy. In a very small, confined space, too. And it was a theater in the round where everybody was sitting around the stage. And the stage was about the size of this room, which was, what would you say, 25 by 15? It's not big. Mm-hmm. And the audience was right there. So as an actor, you cannot tune that out. So as the director of this film, you couldn't tune it out. When you come on stage as an actor, you're going to see the audience. They're part of the process. So the way that he shot that adds to the storytelling, I guess, is the long-winded thing that I'm saying here.
Definitely. And I think that the use of color, there were certain scenes where, like on stage, there was the close to the end of the movie, there's that like deep blue that it's supposed to be nighttime on stage.
Yeah.
And they're using a lot of reds too, I think. And in the hallways were all red, and it seemed like his dressing room was pretty white and kind of
like
bland, I guess. But
old paint.
Yeah, it did seem like oil-based paint.
Yeah,
or
that was
something
chipping
in there.
off,
Yeah.
and they don't spend a lot of money on the backstage. Even on the Broadway show, you would think these would be, extravagant back rooms, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're efficient.
Yeah,
That's what they are.
definitely. And I think we do need to talk about the ending specifically and the conceit throughout the whole movie.
Before that, music. Want to talk about
Which
music?
we didn't talk about, and that's something that was the first thing that. So obviously, other than like, I went through the thing that I go through when there's a long scene where it's like, it's been a while since there's been a cut like that. It kind of crops up after like 3-4 minutes for me. Like I'm like, whoa, this is like a big deal. And and even if it's like a 1 minute take, that's still a pretty long take in a lot of movies. But a lot of times I'll kind of realize it's been a long time since there's been a cut. That I got that kind of like wave of like, stay alert. There's going to be a cut at some point, and like that kept its tension throughout the whole movie for me, which was great. And then the second thing that I realized was like, this is just a drum set. I mean, there are certain scenes where there's kind of things playing in the background, and there's some opera type stuff going on in some of the dressing rooms, I think, and there's some other things happening. But ultimately, the driving force behind this movie, from the craft standpoint, is you've got a long shot that is building tension, and you've got this drum set, which is, I mean, it's a lot of very quick, rhythms, and it is also building tension. And this whole time, it's just kind of ratcheting up. And
just when you get to the point where you're like, oh, stop the drums, he passes a drum set on the street, and it's for real.
And it incorporates in.
And then they play on that later on. See, whoever thought that up, that was... have you ever seen anything like that before? I've seen where the music is coming from another room or
There's
radio.
Something About Mary.
They do that?
There's Something About Mary. The band that played the songs, like I think there's a song called "There's Something About Mary" actually in that movie. Is Tom and Andy, and you see them there'll be a scene, and then it'll jib up, like the camera will move up into the tree, and you'll see the two guys playing on little toy drum and little ukulele. So that happened a couple times in the movie. So I did notice that in that one, and I would kind of equate it to that. But so it is. I wouldn't necessarily call it a gimmick. It's funny. I would call it a gimmick in a comedy, but I wouldn't call it a gimmick in this movie.
Once again, it comes back to, did it serve the story? And it did, because it allows the people to know, the audience to know, this is a movie. This is not real life. You are learning something from this experience. Take it all in, but you can stand back from it, because this is not your life. Mm-hmm. That's why I was saying the thing about standing back a little bit and pulling myself out of it. Mm-hmm. You were just saying about watching the long shots, and you consciously go, okay, there's got to be a cut sometime soon. Yep. I think that's our brain saying, staying safe from whatever the emotional integrity of the moment is. And emotional integrity meaning,
like, this isn't going to affect me because I'm not in this.
I'm going to stand back from it.
And that's my brain saying that. Yeah.
But I've often said this, without the script, you couldn't have the actor. Without the actor, you couldn't have the audience. Without the audience, you couldn't have the actor. Without the actor, you couldn't have the script. It's almost a trinity for me. Mm-hmm. You cannot do it without an audience. The audience is the third part of the puzzle. It's a prominent part. Where are you acting? To the void of nowhere? You're just, sure, I'm sure there are people who just stand on the side of the street, which they have in this movie too.
They do.
That's genius. I just thought of that.
That is great.
I just thought of that. And the speech that he's doing from Macbeth.
Okay.
Tomorrow creeps in its petty pace. That speech, Idiot. Which, strangely enough, there was a John Turturro film based on Macbeth, a loosely adaptation of Macbeth, where he was a gangster, and that whole speech, he looks himself in the mirror, he looks at himself in the mirror, and he goes, "Idiot," and that's all he says, and that's that speech in one word.
Boiled down.
Yeah, and it was amazing to watch that speech be done like that, sort of like that bad actor was doing in the beginning of the movie, but still, until you saw the guy on the side of the street for real.
Similar to the drum set.
Absolutely. Yeah. Where you thought, oh, well, it could have been so overwrought and so overplayed, which is a word I use a lot.
But it was overplayed. The guy was
until
overplaying
you saw him. It wasn't. You thought it was just a monologue saying, and it was creeping in at its petty pace, where... I heard it in the background. I was like, why are they using this Shakespeare speech? And then all of a sudden I heard that speech for the very first time. I've heard it a million times, but I actually heard it. I've listened to it a million times. I actually heard it for the first time, and it actually made sense to me via the film. And then Michael Keaton Cross is the guy. Yeah, I know, after 25 years of Shakespeare.
But then the guy basically breaks the fourth wall.
Again, and says, was that too much?
Yeah. It was.
How could I not love this movie? So it serves the story, though. It allows the audience member to go, this is not this is not an apocalyptic world. There's nothing at stake other than you learning about what you're supposed to take from this movie as an audience member. See, these are just actors. This is just Michael Keaton. This is just Batman. This is just Birdman. You can stand back from it, which also strangely allows you to delve deep into it at the same time because you feel safe. So when he breaks the fourth wall, which he does a million times in this film, literally and figuratively, it allows the audience member to come in and go, oh, I'm in on it. I'm in on the joke. Without me being in this seat watching this movie, there would be no movie.
Yeah.
And that's something that you don't see film and theater pay homage to, for lack of a better term. You don't hear, sometimes directors will sort of joke on the audience and sort of criticize the audience at the same time. Well, you're not smart enough to understand my film, that kind of stuff.
Kind of patronizing, yeah.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Yes, exactly. This does not. It allows you in on it. This is just a play, people. Broadway isn't a powerful thing, but it's just the theater. It's just a movie. It's okay.
Yeah, and I think that soundtrack is done to me what only a couple other soundtracks have done.
There Will Be Blood.
There Will Be Blood is one of them,
but it wasn't one you were going to say?
I'm going to say Drive. And I don't even necessarily like the movie, the music that's in Drive, that kind of like synth pop type stuff.
Yeah.
Harkening back to the 80s and stuff. I don't really like that, but it seemed like it was so interlocked with that movie, that the music was interlocked with that movie. And I watched it by myself and in the theater because I didn't think that Steph would really be interested in Drive. And then I came home and then I started playing the soundtrack and I played it for Steph. I'm like, isn't this cool? And she's like, no, it's not cool. And then I bought the movie when it came out on DVD because I loved it. And I was watching it and Steph was like, do you think I'd be interested in this? And I was like, probably not. I don't know. You watch the first 15 minutes. That's a lot of times what we do. It's like, watch the first 15 minutes. And she's like, that's it, I'm done. And she'll check out. But I said, watch the first 15 minutes. And she really liked the movie. And then afterwards, she's like, hey, we'll be driving around. She's like, hey, where's that Drive soundtrack? You want to play that? And she's like, yeah, she agreed with me in that it enhances, it's like the movie enhances the music and the music enhances the movie. And I think similarly, I've been listening to the Birdman soundtrack over the last week and I can listen to it and enjoy it. And it doesn't have to be a part of the movie, but it definitely enhances the movie. And when I listen to the soundtrack, I'm thinking about the movie too. Yeah. So it's kind of like that symbiotic relationship. And the drummer who did all of that was Antonio Sanchez. So I'm guessing, I don't know much about him, but I love the stuff that he's doing on the soundtrack.
It would be nice for him to be nominated for original score.
I don't know. Cool. There's other stuff in there. That's the problem with this original score category is that there's you have the soundtrack, and I don't know if there's a separate score because on the soundtrack there's a opera piece, and then there's other vocal pieces that I don't think. I think that he didn't have anything to do with.
I think that's going to disqualify him, because that's what disqualified the guy from There Will Be Blood.
Johnny Greenwood.
So I don't know. I don't know how they break that down. I think it's I can't remember. I think the whole thing has to be original with the score. But a lot of times, the music will pull me out of it because it's too overplayed or it's too dramatic or it's not there enough, or you're sitting there wondering what's missing from this scene. You don't even realize it until later on. You're like, there was no music in that scene. Sometimes that's really well done. This, it's almost like just a split second before you see the drummer on the street, your subconscious goes, they're going to pass a drummer on the street. It's for real. And then it happens and you're like, wait, that you don't see that normally. So it's allowing, like I said, to enhance the film and allowing the audience in on the joke, finger quote again, without, like you said, patronizing. So I thought that was great.
And the other movie I think about is Punch Drunk Love. I mean, that same thing that John Bryan does. I mean, he uses different instrumentation, but he does the same thing where it's kind of like they're feeding on each other. The tension of the scene and the music are kind of like feeding on each other, and they just get you all, squirrely in in some cases where you're just like, what's going to happen next? How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to release this tension? So,
and another thing that happened with me with the soundtrack was I cannot wait to see it again so I can know to focus on the drums when they start again. So I can see where it starts, and same with the Shakespeare speech and a lot of different things. This is definitely a movie I will probably watch over and over again for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
For all the obvious reasons. I mean, there are so many obvious reasons why, but I can't wait now that I know it's there. I can't wait to experience it. There's a term for when you watch a movie a second time. You're not watching it for the script or the plot line or the character development. You're just watching it. There's a term for it. I can't think of what it's called. I have to look it up. But I always enjoy doing that the third or fourth time, because at this fourth time that I've seen the film, I can just focus on the drum and the music, and I know what's going to happen. I know the plot. I know what's going to take place. I know where Emma Stone's going. I know where Edward Norton's going. So let me focus on, wait, what are the background people doing? And a lot of times you'll pick up and see things that you never have seen before, and that's why rewatching stuff. People are like, "Aren't you bored rewatching?" And I'm like, "No, I'm even more fascinated because I see things I hadn't seen before." So yeah, the score is definitely top notch.
Definitely. All right. Well, now we're gonna just have to talk about. Spoiler. There's definitely spoilers coming up because we're gonna talk about the very end of the movie, and then we're also gonna talk about something we've kind of been dancing around, I guess. Where, so if you haven't seen the movie, you want to see the movie, you definitely need to stop now. But
And it's important that people realize you should not listen from this point on, because you don't want to give anything away. Because
it robs you of a little bit. I think.
If somebody told me things were going to happen, I'd be like, first of all, you can't describe it without seeing it. Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, so from now on, we're just going to get into spoiler territory. So from the very beginning, basically, you can see that he has some sort of, he has a perception of having some sort of telekinetic power or supernatural power.
Or does he?
And that's what I want to talk about. Is that's another thing that we were talking about, where it kind of brings you in on, like, this is a movie. Excuse me, this is a movie. Because if it wasn't a movie, then he's not going to be able to move something across the table, and he's not going to be able, because that doesn't happen in real life. So, if it did, then people would be on all kinds of TV shows and they'd be doing it to people all the time. So, to me, I think that in a movie that can be real. So we're in this movie, we're watching this movie, and he's moving stuff around. I was okay with that. That didn't detract
they set
from
you up
the movie.
At the beginning.
Yeah, they didn't detract from the movie for me. So I was okay with him having, this ability to move things and change things and summon large eagles made out of metal or something and crash things into buildings and all that stuff. That's fine. Then comes the end. Well, then comes the part where he shoots himself in the face.
Okay, which I think is going to bother a lot of people, and I think the Birdman scene is going to bother a lot of people, but it had to be in there. You had to see him as Birdman. I think the evil nemesis eagle thing on top of the roof, I thought was well done. That's exactly what that movie would look like. I actually want to see a Birdman movie now. Make it. The costume's cool. It works. He looks cool. It works. Make it. Anyway, so obviously that's attributed to the filmmakers, because they made that real. That it didn't for a split second seem like, oh, they just made that up for this movie. That actually seemed like a Batman or Superman, because there is no Birdman in our consciousness. No. There is now, but there isn't. The thing about the telekinetic parts, is it really happening, or is it in his mind? Because in the beginning, he's floating when he's chanting. Now, it didn't dawn on me until the cab scene, okay, where he comes flying down from the sky, okay, halfway through the film, and he goes walking into the theater, and then you see the cab guy get out and go, hey, you didn't pay me. You didn't pay me. But is he talking to Michael Keaton, or is he talking to somebody else?
No, he's talking to Michael Keaton.
Are you sure?
In my interpretation of the movie, okay. Yes.
That's when I went, oh, this is a metaphor for when you're chanting and you're in that headspace, you feel like you're floating.
Okay.
When you're that angry, you feel like you're pointing your finger at something and the stereo goes flying across the room. And here's why it's so brilliantly done is because when Zach Galifianakis walks into the room, he's actually stopped moving things with his mind, and he's actually physically picking things up and throwing them at the same time that they're having a conversation. So it's a little bit of both. I think it's not important whether or not it's real or not. It's in the eye of the beholder. Mm-hmm. That's what true art is. We've talked about that before. What you saw is what you saw. What I saw is what I think it's going to piss a lot of people off because it's going to be like, that wasn't real, man.
But at the same time, the very first scene, the very first shot, he's floating. Okay, so it's like if you're not on board with him floating,
suspension of disbelief set in motion.
If you're not on board with him floating, then you need to leave the theater and don't waste your time.
And the other thing is that an actor's mind works as if they are still make-believing like you were when you were a kid. Maybe that's why my sense or my suspension of disbelief is so strong. Mm-hmm. That's why when something really works, like a Transformer film, I am in it. You know, I feel the cape behind me on the Batman films. I can feel the wind when I'm standing on top of the building or he's standing on top of the building. My suspension of disbelief is very strong. Oh. And it might be because that acting mind that, you know, I come from. I don't know. But an actor has to believe he's actually shooting himself in order to make it for real. Because how else are you going to do that? So he in his mind's eye is really floating. He in his mind's eye is really flying down from the sky. Mm-hmm. He in his mind's eye is really doing these things. So it matters not whether or not you believe it as an audience member. You can take it as literal. You could take it as imaginative. You could take it as he's mentally. I thought they were going to go down the mentally ill road. Mm-hmm. But when you are so stressed from creating something, the anxiety that happens, there's not a med in the world that takes it away. Mm-hmm. Until that actual process, till you're on the stage and the words are coming out and you're walking off the stage and it's done and the lights go down, that anxiety is with you that whole entire time. And it will manipulate the way you see the world. And you say things to people when you're in the middle of working on a project that you would never say. That's why people break up when they're doing movies together or they're doing movies separately. That's why actors don't last together a lot because it twists your...
Volatile.
It's not volatile in a bad way. The creative...
But it shakes things up.
The creative juices, dude, I'm telling you, man, they make... It is probably the closest I'll ever come to being insane if I never do go... I mean, I might go insane. Who knows? You never know. But I'm hoping I don't, you know... And if you're insane, you probably won't know it. But anyway, there is this strange, I call it the dead zone. Did you ever see that movie, The Dead Zone, with Christopher Walken? He would be able to touch people and go into a place and see what was their secrets, basically. Oh, wow. And one time I was doing a monologue and I remember coming out of it and walking off stage and going, wait a second, I don't remember any of that. But I remembered all of it. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's like the scene in Old School where you've seen Old School?
Yeah.
Where Will Ferrell is at the debate and he gets asked this question and he kind of like goes into this like trance and he like rattles off all this information, and then when he gets done rattling off all this information that's perfectly correct, he's like, oh, and then he like kind of like wakes up again and he's like, what just happened? And it's that same thing, it sounds like.
It is. Denzel Washington experienced, he talked about it with making Malcolm X. He would watch the takes and he'd be like, I don't even remember saying that. But literally, I know this sounds really strange. There's some kind of shift that happens when you're locked into that moment and it's real. You're using somebody else's words, you're using your own body, but it's almost like somebody else. I know it sounds metaphysical and strange and the actor becomes this and blah, 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 blah. But there's this weird shift. And I call it the dead zone where you can lock into that. And once you're into that world, you're focused on only that. That creative juice that flows through you can make you feel like you're floating. It really can. It can make you so off-kiltered that you think you've moved things with your mind. So from an actor's point of view, I totally get that. Speaking of which, there's this theory that art imitates life, and there's this big debate whether or not life imitates art. In other words, if you see a crazy stunt in a movie as a kid, do you want to imitate that because you saw it in the movie, or would you have done something crazy like that anyway? My personal opinion is that art imitates life. Mm-hmm. That's my personal opinion. Do I think people get crazy ideas from movies and do them? Sure. But would they have done something crazy anyway?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the movie didn't make them do it.
Exactly.
And I think this is a prime example of art imitating life in the best possible way.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter to me whether or not he's really floating. So to the ending
Yes,
of
to the
movie,
very, very end.
were you disturbed by it? Did you like it?
I wasn't disturbed, and it's taken me a while to understand. Basically, the thing that is confusing is that so he goes out to the ledge, and then something happens. He's in the in the hospital room. He goes out to the ledge, and then something happens, and then his daughter comes in, and she looks down, and then she looks up, and then she starts smiling. So
She looks down over the ledge to see if he's fallen.
And then she looks up, and then she starts smiling.
With the connotation that he's floating in front of her. Flying.
Or that he's flying around, as Birdman or whatever.
Yes.
And I don't know if... I mean, you can kind of equate it to the most recent example would be Inception, where you see the at the very end of the movie, spoilers for Inception.
It's a good comparison.
The top is spinning, and then you see it wobble, and then it cuts. So did the top fall? Did the top keep spinning? It's up for interpretation.
That's because these filmmakers are brilliant enough to know that, once again, what you see in a film is what you see in a film, meaning you, Josh, and me, Paul. We see art is in the eye of the beholder. It doesn't matter what Emma Stone really was seeing. It only matters what you think she was seeing.
Yeah.
So if you thought she saw him flying around and she saw what he's been doing the whole entire film, then that's what you saw. If she just looked up and saw a sunny day, I mean, the inference is that he's flying around.
Yeah, but I think that yes, of course, yes, that's the inference. But I think that that's not necessarily a given. That's not necessarily a requirement of the end of the movie. I mean, I think that she could very well see that, he's fallen to his death, and now she's looking up and, she's, I don't know, like
kind
you said,
of Black
appreciating
Swan moment.
Yeah, or like she's appreciating something, like whatever, the sunrise or something like that, or understanding that he's moved on.
For me personally, what I took from it was that what she's looking at is the representation of him completing his art form.
Yeah.
And what he felt after that is what's on her face. So after you perform, after you've done something and you feel successful at it, which does not happen often, I don't think I hardly ever hear even professional actors say they felt like they nailed it. They're always saying, "Oh, I wish I could have done this differently. I wish I could have done this differently." And somebody says, "Oh, when you walked through the door and you banged your head, that was brilliant." "Oh yeah, but if I walked through just a split second before," actors are always reinterpreting things. That's why these scripts and these plays continue on 200-300 years later, because there's millions of ways to interpret things. So for me, he succeeded not because the play was successful, not because he proved the critic wrong and that he got a good review. It's because he completed the process. And what most people don't get about life, for me, this is from my point of view, obviously, is that it's not about the product that you've created. It's about the process that it took getting there. And he survived, and he rose above it. Yes, he shoots himself. Yes, he does this. That, to me, is a little bit more perplexing.
Why they would add that in there.
Why they made that choice. But I saw it coming a mile away
once they introduced the gun.
Yeah, of course. I was like, this is one of those things that's coming back. The gun is coming back, especially after he makes the red, when Edward Norton talks about
the red, yeah.
Now, there are actors who do that. If you're not chewing the right way when you're eating a watermelon because you're not eating watermelon on stage, there are actors who'll be like, "I don't believe you're chewing watermelon." They're out there. So when he says to him, "I can't believe that gun because it's got a red thing in the red plastic tab in the front of it. How am I supposed to believe this is a real gun?" They're out there. But I also get that too. Because when you turn and you look at somebody on stage and they're getting ready to shoot you and you see a cap gun, it pulls you out. You're like,
exactly.
That's fake. Like, how am I supposed to react to that? It's a cap gun. Bang, bang.
Have you heard of Chekhov's gun?
No.
Do you know? Well, I mean, Anton Chekhov, isn't he a playwright?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I don't know much. I don't know much about him. But okay, so he has a quote that has been interpreted as Chekhov's gun, and I've heard of it before. And this is an exact an exact example of this. So the description that I've got here is remove everything that has no relevance to the story. If you say that in the first chapter that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, it absolutely must go off. If it is not going to be fired, it shouldn't be hanging there.
I agree 100%.
So they introduce this gun, the real gun. They introduce the gun, conceit, and it's the eventuality of it is gonna happen. So
well, the thing is that I was comparing it to Black Swan just a few seconds ago, where I think they sort of cheated that moment. Like he shot his nose off, but he didn't shoot himself. I didn't really get that part.
That was it. It's difficult. How could you shoot?
Yeah. I guess you could technically do it. And I know there's been people who've tried to shoot themselves in the head, and the bullet just goes a strange way, and they don't kill themselves.
Yeah,
That's what would have made it. And I beg for forgiveness that I'm even going to try to reinterpret it because, how dare me? I mean, who am I? But for me, when he took the bandages off, if his nose was a little bit more bird-like from being the reconstruction, just a little bit, might have been a little bit better for me. Maybe not. Now that I just said it, it sounds a little hokey. But there was something about how does somebody do that? How does somebody shoot themselves in the head but shoot only their nose off so he can live at the end of the film? Mm-hmm. But if he kills himself, that's already been told before too. So
yeah, do you think it has anything to do with the cut your nose off to spite your face or anything like that? I was thinking about that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I mean, but then it kind of, usually in that situation, somebody cutting their nose off to spite their face is them basically saying, like, I'm going to do this even though it hurts me.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's that. I think that he bled for his art. I know this all sounds so,
pretentious.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay.
But it's true, though, because this is why I don't think I ever pursued acting as a career, because you have to give yourself over to all of it, just 100%. And I always could kind of see the pretension, I could never get to those moments without doing something weird, like
you were like stepping out,
trying to make myself bleed. If I had to bleed on stage, I could never really get myself there. I don't know why, I just never could. Maybe if I won the lottery and just pursued it, I could. Outside world had more of an influence on me. And they say that if you can do anything other than being an actor and still survive, then do it. Because it's so hard to live as to survive as an actor. It's near to impossible. I mean, the statistic is 99%, unemployment. But I think it was just a basic, he bled for his art form, and he literally, I think he took what Edward Norton said to him just a tad bit too seriously. Yeah. Instead of a fake gun, he gets a real gun and he loads it. But you're also teetering on that, is he mentally stable? Mm-hmm. But once again, I don't think that's about his mental stability. I think that's about his artistic stability, because you do teeter, dude. It's like you wobble when you're in it. Sometimes I don't even want to be around anybody for the half an hour before something and the half an hour after something, because you're just in such a weird mind space. It's something you can't really even verbally articulate. You just can't. It just is. So I thought it was a tad bit hokey that he could shoot himself in the nose and not kill himself. But at the same time, did I want to see him dead at the end of the film? No. I wanted to see him succeed. I thought halfway through it, I was like, this is a succeed or fail film. It's going either way, obviously. But you do want him to succeed because he puts his heart and soul in it. You can see as an actor, once again, we're talking about that other actor who had to act like a bad actor. Well, imagine having to act like you've just learned the lines when you've known the lines for 6 months or however long they've had the script, or having to change something and pretend like you're changing it even though you've already known you're going to change it. It's a strange dichotomy, and you can see Michael Keaton's performance progress and get better as the actor becoming the character. There's also these big theories about actor becoming the character, or the character becoming the actor. People debate that back and forth. But you can actually see, and when he's on stage at the end and he does that speech, which he does like 3 times, it's really perfect at the end. At first, it's very dramatic, very over the top, the speech about why don't you love me? And then he's drained of his emotion from coming on stage at that point in the middle of the film. And then at the end of it, he just speaks those lines. He just says them like a normal human being, a real human being in that situation would say it. He doesn't try to act it. He doesn't allow the outside influence. He just walks on stage. He knows that gun's loaded. He knows this is what's at stake. Why doesn't anybody love me? I mean, you could answer the question that he needs to love himself first, and maybe that's why he floats at the end, if that's what he's doing. Who knows? I mean, there was a point when we had decided to just do this movie as a podcast, and I thought, can we do an hour and a half? And as we progressively talk, I'm thinking we need 3 more podcasts to talk about all the other things we haven't talked about. So it's one of those films that I will see over and over again. Yeah,
definitely. Me too. I mean, I can't imagine this not being in my top 5, this year. It's just, it's kind of impossible, and right now it's definitely the best movie I've seen this year. So.
Hands down, no doubt. I was going to say it's going to be in my top 10 without a shadow of a doubt. It's going to be in my top 5. I cannot stop thinking about it, but in a different way. And we've talked about how that's, for me, a really big compliment where the world stays with me. And this is an obvious thing that should stay with me because I have an acting background, that kind of stuff. But they told it in such a new and original way that, oh, yeah, I never knew that people went up. I mean, I guess I would have thought people went up on the roofs of the buildings and they smoked cigarettes and they did all that stuff. But the way that they showed it and the way that it felt real made me go, it didn't make me want to get back into the world. I'll tell you that much. A few times when they were going on stage, I was like, oh, this is going to make me want to go back on stage. I know it. I can feel it. But it stopped me because I was like, I don't want to float at the end of my movie. Not at all. So let me ask you a real quick question. Do you think Michael Keaton will be nominated for the Oscar?
I'm bad at that, but I wish he would get nominated for that. And I think when looking at the history, I guess, of Best Actor nominations, this is, first of all, this fits into what I've seen as a trend of movies about movies or movies about acting being nominated in general.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the art, even recently, you got The Artist, Argo. Those things tend to get. I'm not saying they're bad movies. I'm just saying that it helps. It does. But I think he's got to get nominated. But I don't feel like I have enough of the history and the knowledge of the Oscars to speak intelligently about it as intelligently about it as you do, because you have a much better history.
I won't go on record as saying intelligently, but I will say I do know the Oscars fairly well. It's something that just sticks in my brain. To this day, I don't know why. I just do. I know 1966, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Elizabeth Taylor won. Why that stuck, I have no idea. Yeah. Paul Scofield won Best Actor. Why I know that, I have no idea, but I do. There is a moment in the movies when I go, this is that feeling that I get when these people end up being nominated, and I can now recognize it, but I have learned to stand back from it because I don't want it to influence what's happening when I'm watching the 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
And I kept saying to myself, there is nothing about this performance that says he should not be nominated. Yeah. I mean, he does everything that you're supposed to do, but he created something new and original. He makes you forget he's Michael Keaton. I mean, we're talking about Michael Keaton, Beetlejuice. And did you see any of that in him? I mean, there's a few inflections in his voice. He seems like that struggling celebrity who wants to do something pure and true in an art form that he's always had a passion for, but his career went one way. Now he wants to go another way. And he bared his soul, and his moment-to-moment work is impressive. Mm-hmm. It's always about moment-to-moment. It's not the big moments for me. It's not the cry scene or the silent scene or the revenge scene. It's the moment-to-moment, the simple things like walking through a backstage of a play and making sure your daughter's not upset with you. There's an intention when you're walking. I want to, whatever the verb is, I want to manipulate the situation so she sees it from my side. You can read all of that on his mind. And then he has those great moments, especially with Amy Ryan, who's only in the film, 2 or 3 scenes?
Yeah, I think 2 scenes.
She's special, though. There's something something pops when she shows up. It's almost like I wanted more with her, but at the same time, what we got was just enough. And I thought Emma Stone and her looked like mother and daughter. I was like, yep. And just that look at the end they don't have a scene together, but just that look at the end where they're like, hey, daughter, hey, mother, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. It's all right there. But anyway, Michael Keaton, it's almost like if you said 5 years ago Michael Keaton would be an Oscar nominee, you almost want to chuckle a little bit. It's like Bill Murray. You almost go, wait, that doesn't, but we've now learned, or I have learned, that it doesn't matter where you come from or what your background is. You know, if your performance is where it's supposed to be, the Academy
recognized.
And I want to say without a shadow of a doubt he will be nominated, but it will almost be interesting to see if he's not, how I'm going to feel about it, because it's going to taint the Oscars this year just a little bit for me and make me kind of, what? How? What? So I'm 99.9% sure.
All right. Well, that's pretty sure.
Yeah, that's pretty sure.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. If you want to check us out on the web, our website is actorandengineer.com, facebook.com/actorandengineer. That's our Facebook page. And on Twitter, we're @actorengineer. So we will see you next week.
Until then.
Bye.